We need a little intro thing, like a video.
You
can cut like after I'm like, you don't know, and they'll be like,
oh wow,
cue the music.
That's true. That's pretty advanced.
Like a banjo, but I don't know.
Are you gonna be a Steve Martin or whatever? Or what?
Steve Martin.
Play your banjo.
Like a Jack Black. You just do the little voices or whatever.
Yeah, that's better actually. Yeah. I like that better.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Lords of War Games and Hobbies video.
How's it going?
Chris and Jay here, coming right at you. And, actually, I was watching some other YouTubers a little bit this week, and which I don't always do for hobby stuff. I tend to watch videos about sports or stuff I'm not, like, in all the time. It's like, YouTube is a lot of people's, like, recluse. Like, they go there for, like, a little bit of a break. And
or to get triggered or whatever.
Or to get triggered, that's right. That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here for.
I was listening to a video made by another YouTuber talking about like pricing, like GW and how they price their models. And within 5 minutes of the video, I wasn't getting upset, but it was more just it was from a place of like purely a consumer who is like having a hard time grasping why does this model, this small model, and the representative that they used, I think they used like Ursula Creed, who's like a $50 Canadian model, and then was like, why does this cost as much as like one Armiger, which is like a much bigger model? And so today we're going to talk about what you might not understand about how GW prices their models, and what sort of like, we call it an algorithm or what kind of like metrics do they use when they come up with those prices, because there is an actual reason for it.
Yeah, no, there's actually a bunch of factors. Something that you'll be able to hopefully take from this video is, in the future, you should be able to take these, metrics or concepts we're going to explain and kind of apply it. They do deviate from things sometimes. There's an occasional time where a model will come out, you're like, oh, that's a little cheaper than I thought, or a little more than I thought, but for the most part, everything kind of fits into these certain buckets. How do we know? We just do. We lived it. We worked for the company. We've had these things explained to us by various management. At the end of the day, what you can there's actually another former GW person has explained this before. Is essentially, regardless of what it is, paints or models, the Games Workshop has a certain margin that they've calculated in the background that you're not privy to, and everything has to average out to that. So the paints, the brushes, the models, they look at their sales volume of everything all together, and so long as the year, they can run a report and hit the average button, and it says, I'm just going to throw a number out, I have no idea what it is, let's say it says 60% or something of the cost or whatever, then they'll be like, that's fine. And that's it, and that's how they price things. But there is more nitty-gritty when it comes to the individual models.
That's how they fit within that scheme, right? So obviously, it doesn't take a genius to think like, some kits obviously heavily subsidize other kits. For example, if you're a Necromunda player, you should thank goodness that there's 40k players. Thank them that they're buying their Primaris Space Marines, because those kits definitely pay for and above some all these little specialist games that don't turn over the same level of volume. But one thing we'll talk about first, which is investment, like the investment it costs to make these things. The investment's the same. Like if you're making a Delac gang for Necromunda, that costs the company just as much to make as a Primaris Space Marine squad of 10 guys, right?
So one way, the first thing I would mention about I guess one of the first metrics is how many frames are in the box and what size are they. So you have heroes that come on like, I don't know, it's like this size or whatever. I don't know what that is, a 4x6 or something, 3 or 4 inches by 4 or 5 inches or something, a little rectangle. Then you have the frames you're kind of used to, where you're like the Primaris box, those like rectangular ones. It looks like it's basically 2 times the size of the little individual clamp. And then you have the A4 size, which is the larger one. And basically why that matters is because they have specific like dies cut for those sizes, and it also will determine like how many pieces they can fit on them. And so something they innovated with over the last, I don't know, at least 10 years or maybe more, is they found a way, or they created a die or a cutting or whatever model making die that involves multiple of these small ones. So for example, they can make like many heroes at once and things like that.
That's definitely like that's why you've seen the proliferation of like plastic special characters.
Correct.
Probably,
Before that, you would never see like just like you would only see plastic infantry or whatever, or like a whole squad. You wouldn't see individual guys. But anyway, so yeah, the size of this room matters. How many in the box is the next thing. Obviously, if they can fit it on one, that's great.
And that's got a lot to do with shipping now these days. Like that's the big driving factor is like how big they can make the box, how many boxes can you fit in a box, sort of thing. That's the logistics game they're playing there.
Yeah. And then there's probably a bit of the complication of the design. So some models are simpler than others. And then the next big thing is also like how many of X do they project that you will need.
So this is where the bulk of the video is going to go towards, because this is no matter what the other costs are, this is the largest driver of the final price that they decide on. So one of the things that you should, if you want to understand this, is think about when Games Workshop is developing a product, they sort of break down their range of products into categories. So like if you think about like on this side of the big chart, it's everyone, like stuff everyone will buy or can buy. And on this furthest end of the chart, we're getting into like specialist games, or we want to call them box games now. Really unique products that are going to only appeal to a select few people. Like think of like I'm trying to think like Necromunda gang tactic card packs. Being like the farthest extreme. This is for a very select few people. So let's talk about the philosophy of that. So Jay, grab a imaginary item off the shelf. Just pick anything in front of you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I got it.
Okay, just tell me what is it? It's not a magic trick. Tell me what it is.
I was like, what's happening? I thought Eldar Shroud Runners.
Okay, sure. So the way that Games Workshop would kind of drop that into their little scheme is they say, okay, first of all, is this something that everyone would buy? No. Okay, so it's the first box that has probably like paints, brushes, primer, all that glue, all that stuff in it. We've already gone past that. Okay. Now we're into is this something that like all
is it 40K?
Is it
yes,
40K?
No.
Okay. Yes. No. Yeah. So cool. Check. Is it part? But is it something that everyone will buy for 40K? No. Because it's not a rule book. It's not any kind of core products. So now you go to specific armies. Is it something every Eldar player will buy?
Maybe.
Yeah. That's going to change depending on how people feel about the rules, how people feel about the model kit. Things can fluctuate between like oddly really specific, or I would probably put it in the middle of the Eldar range. It's probably
half the players probably will buy it, half might not.
So there you go. Right away, it's not Guardians, it's not jet bikes. Right. It's not a core Eldar thing. It's not the Eldar Combat Patrol.
No.
So right away, now you think about how many customers you've cut away. While you've been making that, and now maybe it makes sense why the Shroud Runners are 85 Canadian instead of 70 or 65 Canadian. You know, and you know,
because you get more. The Guardian box has the same amount of pieces or whatever sprues in it, but it's like 60 or something.
So if
like, you're going to buy more,
if Games Workshop if Games Workshop is saying only half of all the Eldar players are going to want to buy this kit instead of 80 or 90%, that has to affect their pricing model because, like Jay was saying earlier in the video, they have a margin that they need to make based on the cost that they put up, because these molds are expensive to make. They have to price that model kit accordingly. So to go back to an earlier example in the video, with one I was watching another gentleman make, something as niche as like Ursula Creed, you can now imagine in your mind, unless she's absolutely bonkers in a current like meta or something, which doesn't happen too often with special characters, how many guard players are absolutely like, I have to have that model?
That's it, and you're leaning into the next thing is like, regardless of how good it is in the game or whatever, or how many they project they sell, there's also just like, will people even like it? Like sometimes there's just models or kits or characters and people are like, I don't really, doesn't fancy me. Like maybe, in the Astra Militarum model range, like she just might not be that popular, like for whatever reason. So they insulate themselves a bit by also just like being like, there's gonna be $50 like all the other characters or whatever. Now there are some exceptions. There's some obvious like, things like I think of like Lionel Johnson or like a new Primarch or something. There's gonna be a little bit premium price because they know that it's gonna sell well no matter what. I'm not going to say and gaslight you and say GMW is not. They're a business. They want to make money.
Absolutely.
And they want to also capitalize on key releases in their year that they know. So if you look at where they need the money for, so you have obviously development costs, production costs, paying staff, but there's that little sweetener on top, which is for the shareholders or whatever, for growth. So that's, they in theory would like year after year to continue to grow, as we all do.
and to go back to that Lionel Johnson, I think that's a good example of occasionally they know they have liquid gold.
Yeah.
Right? And every business and company needs those surefire winners just once in a while. Like even like a shop like us, like we need those like landmark products a couple times a year.
Yeah.
And if we don't have those, the business doesn't do very well, right? Like it's those times when you're like, oh, we're just going to make a good amount of money on this. There's not any risk involved whatsoever making this.
Yeah, you're gonna sell
it's just great.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Jay said, I think they can put a premium price on that because they have that thing. But at the same token, like you can only release Lionel Johnson once, right? That special Primark vibes feeling that you get, it's like a one-time thing, right? Yeah. So there are probably diminishing returns on that.
Yeah. We like to say this phrase when it comes to certain models that are like kind of specific. Like Lionel Johnson's very specific. He's funny enough. He's not that different from the Shroud Runners, except he's like most Dark Angel players will want one. But once he has his own nicheness, which is once he hits the market and all the Dark Angel players that wanted one got one, the sales gonna slow down. It's not gonna be explosive forever. It's just gonna be like, we got ours, we're good.
And once again, let's go back to our chart again, right? Yeah. I think this is the rare example where that model can push further up towards the good side, where like people are buying him because he's a cool model, just to own. Yeah. So he kind of transcends even like the 40K category, for a period of time. Yeah. But ultimately, over the long term, I think he still is in the Dark Angel category. So like Space Marine players won't even buy him. Like if you play Blood Angels, I mean, like I play Blood Angels, like I didn't buy Lionel Johnson, right? Like I don't like I think he's cool.
I was gonna say we have a case study. Literally Gilliman is like and he was new. Everyone wanted one. Sold lots of them, and now I sell one
once in a while. Yeah. He's once again,
and he's the Ultramarine Primer. Yeah, he's not even. He's like the one that goes with everything on the box art and the
absolutely.
Anyway,
he's the good boy with the sword. Yeah. But like it just goes to show like once again they just eventually, even though they are a hot commodity, end up being a choice within a choice within a choice, right? And I think it's just important, like anytime you're thinking in the future, like why is something priced that way, go back to that table and think, where does it actually fit on that table? Yeah. And are people outside that subcategory of a category, are they going to be interested in that model at all, right?
Yeah. And then of course, some other small factors, which I'm sure comes up. This is the one that the little goblin in the closet that's always speaks out is the price memory.
Oh yeah,
people love the price memory, and but they seem to ignore both sides of it. Yes, certain things were cheaper some years before. Yeah, I distinctly remember there was this really specific era. I want to say it was like 07, 08, 09, somewhere in that. I think their technology had gotten better, and they started releasing some things at like a really nice price. So there was like I think it was like 5 new Dark Elf Coldwood Riders or something. And they were like just $30, $29.75.
Yep, I think I remember that. Yeah.
And that was a special time. So there was a small era there where some model kits were really. Now that was a bit of an anomaly because prior to that, so we're talking like earlier 2000s, mid 90s, late 90s, or whatever. Like the prices were not that different from today, even adjusting and whatever. And you got an inferior product. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You got let's put the nostalgia aside. Yes, the models had their own charm, but I have vivid memories of little, smaller than this cup metal Bloodthirster. There's 65 or 70, in year $2,000 in 1999 or whatever.
Right.
5 hybrid metal plastic Chaos Terminators with all kinds of random bits that are floating around in the blister in the they were like 65 or something for 5. Like it wasn't vastly cheaper than you could probably argue it's the same price. So I think that you have to kind of keep that in mind too.
Yeah, and they were using a different not a very vastly different algorithm at the time, but like their costs were much more entrenched in each miniature that they were making, because every time you have to spin cast a model, that's labor. Whereas you have like a much more upfront cost with the plastic miniatures.
It's easier to forecast now than before.
And just how big their business is now. I think the more data you have, the more you can kind of like pinpoint that stuff. My last thing I'll touch on, and I kind of touched on this a little earlier in the video, was sort of like some ranges subsidizing others. That's a very real thing. And another factor Games Workshop will use to price their models is who the consumer they think that will be buying it. So if they know certain products are more for veteran hobbyists, certain games like The Age of Darkness, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, they know, just based on the data that they have, that more advanced veteran hobbyists, people who have been doing it a long time, people that are more likely to have price memory and be more careful about price, these prices are naturally set at a lower, like
they are
compared to what you get for like a 40K or an AOS model, just directly into the specialist games range, you're getting a bargain.
All of the HH products are on average just cheaper than their 40K cousins. Things like 20 Mark 6s for 95, I think they cost.
That's right.
So it's like getting 2 boxes of Space Marines for a discount. A lot of the tanks are just a little cheaper because they know you're going to take squadrons. They know the game uses more models. And then again, you go into Blood Bowl or whatever, Necromunda, gangs are have been pretty consistently in the $55 to $60 range, for the entire gang. So that's, again, on average, just that little bit, $5-10 cheaper. So and then things like Underworlds, they try and keep everything there because they know that card players are likely playing that game. So that I think their average kits are in the 50s or less.
Well, even when that game came out, they were like $30 for a pack.
Very cheap.
The game was really cheap, actually.
I feel like people or Games Workshop has figured out that people are now buying them at least it's our evidence here anyway. It could be different. It could be a massive following in other markets, but here anyway, people are buying them just for the models. The game isn't played as much. I'm sure there's still lots of kitchen table play happening, but and you're seeing it kind of with Warcry. I feel like what they package in the boxes, it's quite well. And then obviously starter boxes, combat patrols, things like that. They price these things to. Again, depending on who it's for. If it's a new person, they know you need lots of stuff to play right away. So they bundle things.
And there's an expectation that, if you buy a combat patrol, it's a bit of a fish and a hook thing where there's other kits to add on to that are going to be more expensive, right? So that's where Games Workshop's going to make the meat and potatoes of their revenue, is when you start to expand your army after the combat patrol.
So at the end of the day, you just have to really, if you care to think about it, is it's easy to go, whoa, that's a lot or whatever. There's a lot of things to factor in, and it's probably they're not. There's occasionally where they're trying to get a win, like a commercial win, but generally speaking, it all follows these similar patterns, and they didn't. Price X to FU specifically because you like that or whatever. It's just, and then of course, I guess we could touch one last tiny thing is they're going to do, and this dovetails to the previous thing about the group margin or whatever they call it is, year over year, you have whatever it is, inflation and needing to pay employees more, costs rising, material costs, something going on or whatever. So that's where you get they typically do this a once a year or every other year, $5 increase across their range or something like that. And that is just to keep up with other forces and things like that. I think it's funny. I think they probably I've noticed what they've done in these previous years. They start to just tell people up front, and it's kind of a necessary thing for their business. I think it's easy to look at Games Workshop and be like, oh, they're obviously the biggest, and that they. I want to say they're not the evil CEO empire or whatever thing. That's not it. I think it has to do with they're still what they produce is so niche and specific that they're still in a world where missteps could be very devastating. They can survive some things, a product maybe this or that flopping or whatever, but it doesn't take much. You could really damage your company or your brand or whatever. I think you're likely to see them, and we've already seen them backtrack on certain things where I think they felt like they didn't get it right. So more so than I think they're like, yeah, anything. It could be even products like Magic the Gathering or whatever, like they or Lego or whatever, they have to be careful. They can just like, you know, if they price something crazy or release something, it's high priced.
Lego could probably be a little like reckless.
Lego could
probably be a little
maybe
reckless.
a little reckless.
They're a gargantuan company.
They're pretty big. They're pretty big. But well, you know what? If they do it for a few years in a row, maybe,
that's it, right?
You know?
It's. I think Jay's absolutely right. At some point, we'll all know if the prices are too high, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're going to talk about that in another video, literally titled "Are the Prices Too High?" And I think like at the end of the day, they're very sensitive to that stuff. It might not feel like it as a consumer sometimes, but they are very sensitive to that sort of thing. So because you can't really afford not to be.
Yeah.
So. Well, thanks for tuning into another video. You can like and subscribe to the video. That helps us out a lot. Also, we just started a Patreon, so if you feel like throwing us a tip or something like that, we'd really appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.